Thank you for joining me today as we give you the latest update on COVID-19 and Oklahoma's fight to flatten the curve. When we started this fight, my number one goal was to protect the health and lives of Oklahomans. Number two was to mitigate the impacts to Oklahoma's economy and get Oklahomans safely back to work. We are 17 days into phase one of our Open Up and Recover Safely plan. We will continue to make decisions based on the data in our state, and we are still in good shape to move to phase two, which will start on May 15th on Friday. Let me show you some of the data. We continue to have in Oklahoma the 8th fewest cases per capita of any state in the country. New York's infection rate is 15 times greater than ours in Oklahoma. Illinois is 5 times worse than ours. And Georgia and Kansas each have twice as many cases per capita than the state of Oklahoma. That is congratulations to Oklahomans. You have done a fantastic job of social distancing, of sacrificing over the last 2 months and really flatten that curve. I want to thank you for all of your sacrifice. If you look at the second map, you can see we are outperforming all the states around us. In fact, our infection rate is just a quarter of the national average. The third slide I wanted to show you is our positive testing percentage. As we've shown you before, when we first started testing back in early April, every test that we performed, 10% of them were coming back positive. As of Friday, we're down to just 5.1% positive. Just a few minutes ago, I got a call from our health department. We got today's numbers in, and we were down to 4.9% positives. So that means for every 1,000 tests that we perform, 49 are coming back positive. That means 951 are coming back negative. When you compare us to New York, New Jersey, they're coming in over 20% of their test cases are coming back positive. When it comes to new cases, we are in good shape as well. We track new cases with a 7-day rolling average to adjust for variances that happen on the weekends. Over the last week, we've had 569 new cases. That's the lowest number since we've been tracking this in early April. You can see how cases went up because of the outbreak there in Texas County, but we have deployed testing, contact tracing. We have our health department deployed over there, some of our National Guard folks to get that back under control. And as you can see, it came back down this week. As I've mentioned, we've recently identified those cases there in Texas County. And that's why I brought Secretary Blaine Arthur, who's been in charge of that response with the health department. And I wanted her to give us a quick update. Secretary Arthur?
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. I wanted to give you all a brief update on the processing facility out in Guyman. I know that the food supply is certainly very important to all of us, and we certainly want to focus on the health and safety of the employees there in that processing facility. We have seen challenges across the United States in processing facilities, so we are certainly very glad to have industry reach out to us here at the Department of Agriculture as well as the Health Department very early on in the middle of March so that we could talk collaboratively about how we could handle the challenges that we might see in the facility. So as of May 9th, there were 90 active cases there in the facility and another 116 employees who had tested positive but have since recovered. About 75% of those employees live in Texas County. Today we have Deputy Commissioner Keith Reed there on site working with Health Department and with Texas County Health Department to test all of the employees there in the facility. So by the end of the week, we'll have all 2,700 of those individuals that will be tested there in Guyman at the processing facility. Certainly from the ag side, what we have been working on is finding solutions for those actual producers. We work very hard here in Oklahoma to have a just-in-time food supply. So when we talk about the pork and the poultry sector, those animals are fed specifically for a certain timeline, and the facility today is operating about 60% capacity. So our staff at the Department of Ag have approved excess capacity to hold some of those animals there, so that as the plant is adjusting to the slower capacity, that they have the ability to adjust to make sure that we're keeping that food supply going, which is so important to everyone, but also managing the animal side of the dynamic. We also have very collaborative discussions going across all state agencies. We understand that the capacity is really the issue when we talk about processing. So we have identified facilities here in the state of Oklahoma that have some processing capacity. Some of those have been shuttered in previous years. So we're having dialogue with them about what options may be there. Also, certainly with other state agencies, there's opportunity to have some of that product donated ultimately to the regional food bank through some processing avenues. So lots of collaboration with industry, certainly across all of our partners in the cabinet as well as the state agencies, so that we can ensure there's a continued food supply for all Oklahomans, but that we're also ultimately always making certain that we are keeping the health and safety of those employees there in the processing facility as a priority, and we're working with that company to make certain they're following all the CDC and OSHA guidelines. So a lot of times in the ag world, we say that ag doesn't stop if it's weather challenges or other challenges, and so we're working with our partners to make sure that ag doesn't stop and we keep that food supply chain moving. So thank you all very much. Governor.
Thank you so much, Blaine, for all you're doing and protect our food supply, and we're excited to have you on that. Last week, I want to show you the next slide. Last week we performed 25,000 tests. That's a 50% increase over the week before, but our cases remain flat. That means our infection rate is going down. Like we showed you earlier, that is a great thing in our state. It's one of the gating criteria that the White House puts out before you can safely reopen a state. We'll share more with you later this week, but our data in Oklahoma continues to support us moving to phase 2, which will start on Friday, of our Open Up and Recover Safely plan. I also want to give Oklahomans an update on the state budget. The legislature writes the budget and passes a series of bills that as governor, I get to sign or veto. I have an obligation to protect our core services and also to protect the taxpayers of the state of Oklahoma. I take my job very seriously, and that's exactly what I'll do. I received information from Tom Spencer. Tom is the executive director of the Teachers Retirement System of Oklahoma. And I quote, "The TRS portfolio is down $1 billion since June 30th of 2019. If we close the books today, the funded ratio on a market basis would drop from 72.3% to around 64%. I will not play a part in harming Oklahoma's teachers. I want Oklahomans to know that I am vetoing House Bill 2741 and 2742, which would rob from our teachers' retirement fund, our law enforcement retirement fund, and our firefighters' retirement fund. We have made great progress shoring up our retirement systems in the last few years. Now is not the time to undo that progress. These bills will take tens of millions of dollars away from teachers to fund district costs. And it would bring our funding ratio back down to where it was in 2014. Rating state pension funds to balance the budget is unfortunately nothing new in this building. But just last year, the legislature was talking about how important it was to protect pensions even during a recession. Oklahomans deserve better. So again, I'm going to veto House Bill 2741 and 2742 that harms our teachers' retirement fund. I will not play a part in this. As far as the rest of the budget goes, I'm still working through those concerns. I don't know, I've got a couple questions on the current budget that my team is still working through. We were cut out of the budget process. But my questions are stuff like, they're pulling $16 million away from our children in DHS, pulling $6 million out of our health department during the largest pandemic that our states faced, and cutting the budget of public safety by 9% while increasing the budget of the Attorney General's office by 12%. I have until Wednesday night to decide whether I'll sign or veto the rest of the budget bills, but I wanted to be transparent with Oklahomans and update them on how things were going. I'll open it up for a few questions.
Governor, your thoughts on the Senate today basically saying they're not going to vote on Gary Cox's confirmation, which acts like a pocket veto, and he will not be confirmed?
So the question was, the Senate decided not to vote on Gary Cox's confirmation. That's something that Oklahomans, I really want them to pay attention and understand and really ask those questions. It's very disappointing. As the governor, by Constitution, I'm supposed to run the different state agencies. And so Gary Cox has 40 years experience in public health. He ran the Tulsa Health Department. He did such a good job, he moved to the Oklahoma City Health Department, and we promoted him and invited him to run the State Department of Health. During this pandemic, I believe the data speaks for itself, and we have done a great job in manage this pandemic. You can see we have the 8th fewest cases, our testing is going well. Can't say enough great things about the health department. And to not confirm this person, I just want Oklahomans to ask the question, why? What's going on? It's just the unfortunate part of this politics that my job as governor is just to explain to Oklahomans what's going on. That's the Senate's job, and that's to confirm, and we live with the consequences, but Oklahomans, I want you to ask those questions, because this guy has a law degree. He replaced a guy with a law degree. Last year during the session, some of those agency heads, they removed requirements, and they said, hey, for 10 years of equivalent experience, we removed some of the PhD requirements. We could easily do that for Gary Cox, but if they don't confirm him, he's out of a job on May 31st, and that means during this pandemic, I've got to try to go look for another agency head in the middle of trying to deal with COVID-19. So it's very disappointing.
Governor, we were told that in mid-March you walked away from the budget table. Can we get your perspective on what happened in mid-March?
Yeah, I can assure you, I never walked away from the budget discussion. We were boxed out of the budget discussion. My Secretary of Budget, Mike Mazie, was on a phone call with Appropriations Chair Wallace and Appropriations Chair Thompson. And you'll have to talk to those three. They were on a call together. One of them says that Mazie hung up. My Secretary of Budget says he didn't hang up. He was waiting on a phone call back. So it's just he said, she said. But I can assure you, we have been ready and willing to talk about the budget at any time. As the executive, think about this: if you're Oklahomans or you're a business person and you're putting together a budget, and you decide not to talk to the people that are running those different agencies, it's just mind-boggling that we're all on the same team here. We're all trying to deliver core services for Oklahomans. We all need to work together. That's what's so frustrating when people get hurt feelings and they're trying to do things outside of what's best for Oklahoma. And I can tell Oklahomans, I'm here, I'm ready and willing, I'm going to look at the budget. I'm only going to sign a budget that's good for Oklahomans and good for Oklahoma taxpayers. But the legislature can always override it. They can always override the veto, that's what they're threatening to do. But that's fine. They can. They'll have to answer to Oklahomans why they did these certain things in the budget. I'm going to continue to be transparent and continue to tell Oklahomans exactly what's going on at the Capitol.
Governor, and I don't know, Secretary Mazie, if you want to join the podium as we talk about this, but I think the budget chairman that you referenced, Senator Thompson, Representative Wallace, have said multiple times on the record that they sent an email request asking that everybody get together and talk about how the federal money and the CARES Act might be used in a way that could mitigate some of the budget decisions they have to make, right? And they claim that as of last week, they never received a response to their email. Is that true that they sent an email? Is it true they didn't receive a response? And if you're saying this now about everybody sitting down together and doing what's best for Oklahomans, are you guys all going to sit down, House, Senate, and administration, and talk about how the federal money works in the budget?
It's a great question. There was a letter sent from Chairman Thompson to our office asking to be part of that process. Whether we've responded to that letter or not, we absolutely will bring every stakeholder to the table. But the kind of a misconception is that we can use these CARE funds to backfill revenue shortfalls. It's just simply not the case. Our federal delegation, the President of the United States, gave those CARES funds at the discretion and the discretion of all 50 governors to distribute to pay for expenses related to fighting COVID-19. That's what those CARE funds are for. We're setting up a very robust process with finance directors. We'll be rolling out this week, but there's a lot of guidance that we were waiting on up until even today. We're getting guidance on how we're supposed to deploy those CARE funds. On Friday the 15th, we'll have a platform stood up for our municipalities and our cities across the state to request reimbursements for those CARES funds. And so we will have every penny, and we'll be giving daily updates to the legislature on how every single penny is spent. But those funds, we're following what our federal delegation, what the President of the United States funded, how they funded those in our state, and we'll continue to do that the right way.
Just to be clear, and I'm sorry, Governor, you said that you're aware of the letter that Chairman Thompson sent. Did your office respond to it or not?
No.
Why?
Because the letter was from Chairman Thompson. It was just to try, well, number one, that letter was asking for them to be responsible for how the funds were spent. And that's contrary to what how the law said. So the President of the United States and our federal law said that money went to the executive branch to fight COVID. Even if I wanted to give that money over to the legislature, I would be in violation of the federal act by doing that.
Governor, one of the differences it seems, at least on the budget between you and between lawmakers, was last month you talked about what might be necessary to be close to a 7% cut throughout the entire FY21 budget. The lawmakers said they were going to do it across the board 3% cut total. I guess one, they said they never got the underlying math from you and maybe didn't buy that number. And two, would you push for more cuts in the FY21 budget? Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Well, that's a great question, because when you look at the details, there's $939 million worth of one-time funding. So Oklahomans need to realize this. They're pulling $939 million to plug a funding gap and to spend that money this year. What do you think is going to happen next year? So the question on that $939 million, just to give you some highlights, $180 million of that is coming out of our roads and bridge funds. $180 million over the next 2 years is coming out of roads and bridges. My goal and my job as governor, what I told Oklahomans, is I want to be top 10 in roads and bridges. We will have to redo the 8-year plan if we pull $180 million out this year and next year. And we can get Secretary Gatz up here to talk about what that's going to do to our roads and bridges. So we're taking all these one-time funds and we're trying to backfill this budget when we have to make some other serious. I would love to be part of those conversations on what agencies and where we can go ahead and make some cuts. Because next year, when we're in here in February, it's going to be a cliff we're falling off of because those one-time funds won't be available. So the other place that they get this $939 million is from revolving funds inside state agencies. For example, and I said it in my first points, they're taking $16 million from DHS, revolving fund, plus they're cutting DHS another, I think 9%. They're going through and they're taking these different funds. When there's so my question is, there's other accounts that have revolving funds that aren't touched. The Attorney General's office has $19 million in their revolving fund that they're not grabbing. There's other funds out there. So my question is, and the questions Oklahomans should be asking, is why do you take $16 million from DHS and then cut them another 9%? Why do you take $6 million out of the Department of Health and then cut them? So those are the questions I have. Again, I wasn't part of the budget process. I've got a lot of questions like that. My job as governor is either to sign or to veto the budget and to explain to Oklahomans, what is a good budget.
Governor, can you talk a little bit on the first bill that you said you're going to veto, 2741? So it takes money from the teachers' retirement fund to help fund or fill the cuts in education. So without taking from the retirement fund, there are going to be more cuts to education next year. So I realize it's a terrible either-or situation. And maybe there's a third option. Do you have a third option or a better idea of where that money should go? Because I'm sure everybody wants to avoid cuts to education right now.
Well, think about that. You said it very, very good. We're taking from teachers, we're taking from the teachers' retirement, and we're filling administration cost. That's what we're doing. So we need to be smarter than that. And yes, I would love to be part of those conversations with the legislature. I think we're better when we're together. Last session, we had I've been very transparent with the budget, with exactly what our priorities are. And this has been a very disappointing, contentious session. And I'm going to continue to expose what I think is going on and let Oklahomans know the politics that's going on inside this building. It's frustrating. But to grab money from the teachers' retirement fund and then to pay administration costs is not a good long-term strategy.
Governor, I have talk to you about two different topics related to nursing homes. At the last press conference 2 Thursdays ago, you mentioned that Oklahoma was one of 2 states rolling out saliva testing, and that you plan on testing every resident and staff member at every nursing home in the state. But last week, one of our reporters was told on Friday that the state had run out of these tests. So can you update us? Does the state have the saliva test they need to start doing that, and when could this get them to the public?
Yeah, so the saliva test that we're doing is 17,500 residents inside our nursing homes, 24,000 workers. Our goal is to get through all 308 nursing homes by the end of this month. And so we're, I think, 40% of the way through that. We contracted with a lab in Lubbock, Texas, that we're sending those saliva tests to right now. We've been ordering the specimen cups, so we have those. OSU is, I think, days away, or they may already have validated their own saliva test. The reason we contracted with the lab in Texas is because we did not have a saliva testing facility here in Oklahoma that was certified yet. But saliva testing was much easier than the swabs on some of those elderly population. That's why we chose to contract that way. And I wanted to get through all the nursing homes, because if you think about it, that's our most vulnerable population. 43% of our deaths have been related to nursing homes. And so that's also why I have the National Guard, which we gave an update last week, doing a deep disinfectant, sanitizing, cleaning across all of our nursing homes. We've got 11 different strike teams out across Oklahoma right now.
And just the other topic I wanted to mention was that nursing homes, and we've been working the nursing homes are pleading for federal and state aid to help cover the cost of protective equipment for their workers and residents. The Trade Association of Care Providers of Oklahoma estimated the cost at $50 per day per resident for protective equipment. And so is relief aid going to be made available to nursing homes through state or federal aid, and when?
So I can't speak to the federal side of that, but I will say from the state perspective, we have been sending out PPE. We sent out 2 weeks ago, I think, to every nursing home in the state to provide PPE to them. We have a great system set up where they can also request further PPE shipments, and so we're constantly doing that to first responders, hospitals, nursing homes, of course. As far as an enhanced reimbursement, we're looking at that. We got an enhanced reimbursement at our healthcare authority. It was about a 6.2% increase to pay for some of the Medicaid increase in our rollees, but also potentially to reimburse some of those nursing homes. So we're looking at that. We're also talking to our federal partners about getting that one-time, kind of grant payment to some of our nursing homes, because they are having to pay overtime or paying folks to take care of some of those COVID-19 patients. We're very sensitive to that. We're working as hard as we can to try to get those out to our wonderful partners in the long-term care facility.
Governor, whole segments of our economy have lost their jobs now for no fault of their own because of the pandemic. They will not be able to pay rents. Coming up already right here in Oklahoma County, we have hundreds of filings for eviction orders lined up for Monday alone. The ACLU of Oklahoma have asked you to use your emergency powers to declare a moratorium, not to erase, but just to declare a moratorium on evictions over around August there, where the CARES Act effectiveness also comes out there as well. They are asking for broader spectrum than just federally funded, like Section 8 and all that. Are you going to do that?
Well, we're looking at that. My goal right now is to get those dollars in the hands of the Oklahomans that have lost their job. We've had over 400,000 that have applied for unemployment. And so when you get that unemployment dollars in there, the purpose of that is to continue and keep the economy going, which is rent, and it's food and electricity and those kind of things. So we're looking at that. We haven't seen that to be a big problem right now, but I'll continue to monitor it.
Did Elon Musk get back to you, and how hard are you really going after him?
To my knowledge, Elon Musk has not got back to me, but I know our team, we're working on a site. Actually, we've proposed 3 different sites. This was really unrelated. They were looking for another site here in the state of Oklahoma, or excuse me, across the country, and we were down to the final 3 states. We submitted 3 or 4 different sites, and so unrelated to what he was talking about, they were already looking for an expansion site. Our Department of Commerce is all over that. We've been putting the package together for them. So then whenever he tweeted out his frustration, we thought it was a good time to kind of be top of mind with him, not only on the one site we're already working on, but maybe even for future sites.
Did you talk to him about the Burns Flat Spaceport? No. On a more serious note, let's talk about the economy. The $1.3 trillion estimation of the shortfall for next year. I got the sense that was under some of the most dire predictions. It looks like, according to the data, that we're going to get to reopen some more phase 2 on Friday. People can go to the bars and stand far away from each other, which will be fun. But do you sense that since we're reopening the economy, that maybe that would be a change? Have you asked the tax commission to look at any new numbers on the economy as a result of things moving forward to reopen in May?
I have not asked the tax commission to relook at that. It was just a couple of weeks ago that they gave us that estimate. I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but our economy, we've had a double whammy. Not only the COVID-19, but also the oil and gas reduction in demand. The pricing has fallen off, has fallen into the bottom. So it's going to be it's going to be a while. We've talked to the oil and gas experts that think it's going to be closer to 2022 calendar year before we start seeing some kind of recovery. We're down to 13 rigs in the state of Oklahoma, and so it's going to be a while before that recovers as well. But when you think about the revenue shortfall, was actually 1.7 billion, but since we pushed the tax dollars from fiscal year 2020 into 2021, it was only 1.3. So the real revenue shortfall was predicted to be 1.7 billion, but we had a pushback from 2020 to 2021, so it was only 1.3. But when you look at 2022, which really is 9 months away, we're going to be in here talking about the fiscal year 2022 budget in February. That was 1.7 billion, and then even if you consider that coming back 50%, and we've done some of those calculations, you're still looking at about a $7.2 billion budget. I know I'm getting into the weeds, but there's also one-time cash that we have the benefit from in this year's budget, 2021, which was $319 million carried over from 2019's budget. We're not going to have that one-time cash in the 2022 budget. So there's a lot of things that are going to hit us in 2022. Luckily, we went into this with $1 billion in savings. If you remember, we got criticized last year by wanting to save $200 million. And some of those folks, you can pull out their tweets, they were making fun of the governor about wanting to save $200 million. And I said, the time you have to save is during the good times. Thank goodness we're going into this with a $1 billion savings account, and we're going to spend that in 2020 and 2021. But we have to get a good budget this year, or we're going to fall off the cliff again next year.
Thanks, everybody. We'll be back in the next few days.